Strange to say, I discovered Sir Philip Sidney rather late. I think I was doing my pre-degree at the time, what is now known as plus two, and what was even earlier known as intermediate. When other Indian boys of my age were becoming hardcore fans of Amitabh Bachchan, I became a hardcore fan of Sir Philip Sidney. Sir Philip Sidney was everything I wanted to be, and perhaps also everything I could never ever become. Sir Philip Sidney was a soldier, a courtier, a diplomat, administrator, a poet, a prose writer, a scholar, and above all, a lover. Sir Philip Sidney was born in 1554 and he died in 1586 as a result of a fatal gunshot he had received while taking part in the Battle of Zutphen. His greatest contribution to English poetry is, of course, Astrophil and Stella, while his important prose works include Arcadia and Apology for Poetry. The sonnet sequence Astrophil and Stella is based on the real-life romance of its author, Sir Philip Sidney, with Penelope Devereux. Penelope Devereux, daughter of the first Earl of Essex, was one of the spectacular beauties of the court of Queen Elizabeth I. She had golden hair, dark eyes, was a gifted singer, a gifted dancer, an excellent conversationalist, highly informed, fluent in several languages including French, Italian, and Spanish. The love between Sir Philip Sidney and Penelope Devereux appears to have begun as a kind of puppy love, and at one point they were even engaged to each other. But fate had other plans. The engagement was broken, and Penelope was married off to Lord Rich, an extremely wealthy nobleman with an appropriate name. But Sir Philip Sidney continued to love Penelope with a love which was profound, passionate, and of course, unrequited. The relationship between Sir Philip Sidney and Penelope Devereux ended abruptly when Sir Philip Sidney died unexpectedly at the young age of 31 as a result of a wound that he was inflicted with in the Battle of Zutphen. With how sad steps, O moon, thou climbest the skies, how silently, and with how worn a face, what may it be that even in heavenly place, that busy archer his sharp arrows tries? Sure, if that long with love acquainted eyes can judge of love, Thou feelest a lover's case, I read it in thy looks. Thy languished grace, to me that feel the like, thy state descries. Then even of fellowship, O moon, tell me, is constant love deemed there but want of wit? Are beauties there as proud as here they be? Do they above love to be loved, and yet those lovers scorn whom that love doth possess? Do they call virtue there ungratefulness? I have read the poem at one go so that you will get a feel of the moving beauty of this poem, which is the most famous sonnet in the sonnet sequence, Astrophil and Stella. The speaker looks at the moon and then speaks to the moon. The speaker addresses the moon, and the speaker realizes that the moon climbs the skies with sad steps. It appears to the speaker that the moon is not happy. Of course, it is climbing the skies every night, but the moon is not happy. It is with sad steps that the moon climbs the skies. How silently and with how worn a face. The moon does not laugh. The moon does not celebrate. The moon does not even talk. The moon climbs the skies sadly and silently, and with how worn a face. Worn means pale, especially as a result of illness, especially as a result of exhaustion. One can find the distinct influence of these beautiful lines on the short poem of Percy Bysshe Shelley titled To the Moon. This is what Shelley says: Art thou pale for weariness of climbing heaven and gazing on the earth, wandering companionless among the stars that have a different birth? What may it be that even in heavenly place that busy archer his sharp arrows tries? The speaker wonders whether the moon is caught in a romantic entanglement, whether even the heavenly place is not safe against the arrows of Cupid. There is an allusion to Cupid, the Roman god of love, in these lines. Cupid was the son of Venus and Mars. He was visualized as a chubby boy with wings, armed with bow and arrow. The arrows were tipped in gold. The gold tipped arrows of Cupid were sufficient to make people fall in love. The speaker alludes to Cupid as the busy archer because love is a very common emotion and people are falling in love at the drop of a hat. Cupid, as I said, was the Roman god of love, equivalent of the Greek Eros. This is perhaps the opportune point to bring into conjunction with the present poem a famous poem of William Wordsworth. The famous poem of William Wordsworth titled Strange Fits of Passion Have I Known. In the present poem, the speaker suspects that the moon itself has fallen in love and is facing a problematic romantic relationship. The Wordsworth poem explores sensitively the complex and irrational anxieties that go along with deep love, and also the constant fear of loss that accompanies any relationship of profound love. Sure, if that long with love acquainted eyes can judge of love, thou feelest a lover's case. I read it in thy looks, thy languished grace, to me that feel the like thy state descries. The speaker says that he has had long experience in love. He has been a lover for a long time. So it can be said that his eyes are long acquainted with love, long with love acquainted eyes. He has been observing love and lovers for quite some time. His eyes are very familiar with the behavior of lovers. If eyes which are long acquainted with love can judge of love, if such eyes are capable of judging of love, thou feelst a lover's case. You appear to be a lover's case. The speaker claims that he has a very long experience in the field of love. His eyes are very familiar, are long familiar with love. Based on that experience, if he looks at the moon, he realizes that the moon is a typical lover. By the way, this is factually correct. Modern psychology supports this perspective. According to modern psychology, a person with a long experience in love, a person who has spent years and years as a lover, can easily identify other lovers. Just as the speaker in the poem identifies the moon as a lover. I read it in thy looks. The speaker says that he is able to observe the moon and interpret that the moon is in love. I read it in your looks. Your looks make it very clear to me that you are a lover. You are very much in love with someone. The speaker reads the moon as he reads a book and realizes that the story of the moon is a story of unrequited love. Thy languished grace. Grace is charm, glamour, good behavior, polite behavior. Thy languished grace. The moon certainly has grace, but it is a languished grace. Languished means weakened. Weakened, drawn of all the vitality. All the vitality has been sucked up. The moon is certainly a lover because he has grace, not just grace, languished grace. He is an unrequited lover. Thy languished grace to me that feel the like thy state descries. Languished grace is weakened Grace. There is grace, of course. Good behavior, polite behavior, good conversation, good interactions, charm, glamour. There is grace, but it is a weakened grace, languished grace, a grace whose vitality has been drawn. To me, that feel the like, to me, who is also in the same boat as you, who feels as similarly as you, feel the like, feel in a similar manner as you, thy state descries. I am able to see your state. I am able to see your condition. I am able to see the situation in which you are. It may not be out of place here to point out that William Shakespeare was also fascinated by the moon. The moon is mentioned rather frequently in the corpus of William Shakespeare. Furthermore, there are sonnets like Sonnet 35 and Sonnet 107 where much importance is given to the moon. We now come to the most interesting and impressive part of the poem, the last few lines of the poem. Then even a fellowship, O moon, tell me, his constant laugh, deep there, but want of wit. Then even a fellowship means sharing the same experiences as me. We are fellows in the same category. Then even a fellowship having the same experiences as me. Both of us are in the same boat. Then even a fellowship, O moon, tell me. The speaker now addresses the moon. In fact, he poses a question to the moon. O moon, tell me. His constant laugh deemed there but want of wit. His constant love, steadfast love, unshakable love, deemed, considered in the heavenly sphere, deemed there but want of wit, lack of intelligence, is deemed there folly. From the experience of the speaker, it is clear that constant love is looked upon as folly in the earthly sphere. Now he wants to know whether that is the that is the same in the heavenly sphere. So he asks the moon, is constant love deemed there, considered there, but want of wit? Just as, he doesn't say exactly that, but just as constant love is considered to be folly in the earthly sphere, the speaker wants to know, is constant love looked upon in the heavenly sphere as want of wit, as lack of intelligence, as folly? The moon frequently appears in the works of Chaucer, both as a celestial body and as a symbol. Chaucer attempts to see the moon from astronomical, astrological, classical, symbolic, and literary perspectives. Are beauties there as proud as here they be? The speaker, who is obviously in love with an extremely beautiful girl, wants to know whether beauties in the heavenly sphere are as proud as they are in the earthly sphere. The speaker is in love with a beauty, with a spectacular beauty, but she is also a proud beauty. And the speaker wants to know, Are beauties there in the heavenly sphere as proud as here in the earthly sphere, as here they be? Edmund Spenser was a poet obsessed with the moon. The moon repeatedly occurs in Spenserian poetry as a natural object, as an object of nature, as a classical allusion, as an image, as a symbol, especially as a symbol of purity or chastity, or as a symbol of the Virgin Queen, Queen Elizabeth I. We now come to the last three lines of the sonnet, which are the most discussed, the most debated, even the most controversial lines in the entire poetic corpus of Sidney. Do they above love to be loved, and yet those lovers scorn, whom that love doth possess? Do they call virtue their ungratefulness? The speaker asks about the state of affairs in the heavenly sphere. Do they, beautiful women, do they above love to be loved? Why do beautiful women fall in love in order to be loved? Is that the same in the heavenly sphere? Do they above in the heavenly sphere love to be loved? They love because they want to be loved. And yet those lovers scorn whom that love doth possess. And yet still, when a lover is completely possessed as by a spirit, by love, these beautiful women who love in order to be loved have nothing but scorn for them, for the lovers. Thus, here we are face to face with a strange situation. A woman, a beautiful woman, falls in love in order to be loved. But when the man loves her too much, when she realizes that the man is completely possessed by love, she has nothing but contempt for him. She scorns him. She has nothing but scorn for him. The last line of the sonnet is rather difficult to explain. Do they call virtue their ungratefulness? There, of course, points to the heavenly sphere. In the heavenly sphere, do they call virtue ungratefulness? Virtue means good quality, high moral standards. Do they call virtue in the heavenly sphere ungratefulness, lack of gratitude? There are two ways in which this last line of the sonnet can be interpreted. One is, do ladies in heaven call their lovers' virtue ungratefulness? The second is, do ladies in heaven call their own ungratefulness virtue? The first interpretation is the traditional interpretation. Do ladies in heaven call their lovers' virtue ungratefulness? It seems to be a reasonably good reading of the line. But the problem is with the last word of the line, ungratefulness. Do ladies in heaven call their lovers' virtue ungratefulness? When lovers love with absolute totality, complete devotion, Why is it that ladies in heaven, ladies in love, call that obsessional devotion to them ungratefulness? It appears that the word ungratefulness does not fit into the context. It is rather inappropriate. So, Charles Lamb founded the second school, which says that the closure of the poem means, do ladies in heaven call their own ungratefulness virtue? On the face of it, this seems to be a better way to interpret the last line of the poem. On the face of it, the second interpretation appears to be a better and more convincing one. Do ladies in heaven call their own ungratefulness virtue? When the lovers love the ladies with absolute devotion, complete totality, obsessional totality, the ladies, instead of appreciating this, instead of rewarding this, develop scorn for the lovers. They have nothing but scorn for the lovers who love them with complete devotion. What is this but ungratefulness? But the poet asks, do ladies in heaven call their own ungratefulness virtue? This is a rather convincing way to interpret, to read the last line of the poem. But the problem is that there is absolutely no clue anywhere in the poem which suggests that this reversal should be effected with regard to, in respect of the last line of the poem. On what basis did Charles Lamb decide to reverse the word order and extract a convincing interpretation of the last line? And on what basis did the followers of the school, the followers of Lamb, decide to reverse the word order and then say that this is the better interpretation? The subject of the three preceding questions in the poem is ladies in love. And this fact, the fact that the subject of the three preceding questions is ladies in love, makes the reversal of word order contextually improbable. So we have to return to the first interpretation. Do ladies in heaven call their lovers' virtue ungratefulness? Many years back, I published a short paper in the Explicator in which I uphold the first interpretation, but also attempt to explain why Sidney used the word ungratefulness. The paper was later published in my book, or rather republished in my book, Shifting Paradigms. The sole problem with the first interpretation centers around the word ungratefulness. When lovers love ladies with complete devotion, why do the ladies call this complete devotion ungratefulness? The word simply does not appear to be appropriate for the context. So, what I try to do in my paper is to explain how the word ungratefulness is brilliantly suitable, is perfectly appropriate in the context in which Sidney uses it. From the perspectives of the speaker, this is a rather weird situation. There is no logical explanation for it. Ladies love in order to be loved. Why else should they love? They love in order to be loved. But when the lovers become possessed by their love, as by some spirit, the ladies, instead of appreciating it, instead of rewarding it, have nothing but scorn for the lovers who are possessed as by some spirit with their love. And then the ladies call this, of all things, ungratefulness. How do I solve the problem in my paper? I shall try to read a few lines from it, from my paper. This is what I say. This state of loving with infatuated totality is what is looked upon as ingratitude by ladies when it should actually be seen as virtue. The term ingratitude does appear somewhat strange here, but a close analysis of the passage brings out the appropriateness of its use. Lovers love just as ladies do, in order to be loved. And when they are completely devoted, they expect the same from their women, and this is what is called ingratitude by the latter. I think that Sidney deliberately chose the word ungratefulness because although it renders the closure of his sonnet slightly recondite, it powerfully highlights the expectation of reciprocity intimately present in love. Unquote. I hope I have made an effective case. When lovers love their ladies with infatuated totality, with absolute dedication, with complete devotion, they expect the same from the ladies. And the ladies, having better things to do perhaps, are unable to rise to the expectations of the lovers. And this is what is called ungratefulness by them. By the way, I am reminded of the famous poem of John Keats, La Belle Dame Sans Mercy, the beautiful lady without pity. These women are all like that, especially when they are beautiful. The more you love them, the more they torture you. Astrophil should have understood this at the very beginning of his ill-fated romance with Stella. When I read Astrophil and Stella for the first time, I became convinced that Astrophil is the perfect Petrarchan lover. Petrarch was the Italian poet, scholar, diplomat, collector of manuscripts, who lived in the 14th century and who became one of the founding fathers of the Renaissance. In fact, his rediscovery of the manuscripts of Cicero is said to have triggered the Italian Renaissance. His love story, Petrarch's love story, he fell in love with Laura, became the basis for some extraordinary poetry, some remarkable poetry, some great poetry. He wrote more than 300 poems, including sonnets, on the subject of his romance with Laura. He perfected and popularized the sonnet, and the sonnet became the rage of Europe, and not even Spencer and Shakespeare and Milton were immune to the madness. There is no doubt that Sir Philip Sidney was profoundly influenced by Petrarch. There are quite a few aspects which suggest that Astrophil is a typical Petrarchan lover. The first of these is, of course, love. You have to fall in love in order to become a Petrarchan lover, or for that matter, any kind of lover. It is not enough that you fall in love. The love has to be unrequited. You have to fall in love passionately, intensely, completely, and the love should be unrequited. This is precisely what we meet with in Astrophil and Stella. Why is the love unrequited? There can be a number of reasons, but one of the reasons is the woman is married. Laura was married. So was Stella, Penelope Devereux. She had married and unhappily married at that the wealthy aristocrat with an appropriate name, Lord Rich. It is not enough that you fall in love. You should fall in love with an extremely beautiful woman. Or rather, whether she is extremely beautiful or not, you should say in your poetry, you should say in your sonnets that she is extremely beautiful. Beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. And I think an important precondition for a lover to become a Petrarchan lover is the tendency towards idealization. And this we do meet with very much in Astrophil and Stella. What happens when you fall in love with a woman, with an extremely beautiful woman, and she refuses to return your love? You suffer. This is precisely what we come across in Astrophil and Stella 31. This very important ingredient in the life of the Petrarchan lover, suffering, is found abundantly in Astrophil and Stella. The suffering is not something simple and straightforward, but complex, because the situation compels the Petrarchan lover to undergo internal conflicts, psychological trauma, conflict and trauma, internal conflict and trauma. And this is also found in Astrophil and Stella. For example, in Astrophil and Stella 31, Astrophil wonders why all this is happening. Is this the way things should happen? Is this the way things happen in the heavenly sphere? Is his fate, the wretched fate that he undergoes, what the moon also undergoes? The Petrarchan lover displays a tendency towards overstatement, exaggeration in praising his beloved. in describing her beauty, in exploring the intensity of his own passion. And this too is found in Astrophil and Stella. I think we can add one more aspect, one more feature, and that is classical allusions. Petrarch is full of allusions, references to Roman mythology. And in Astrophil and Stella 31, we have a clear allusion to Cupid, the Roman god of love. So, this aspect of Petrarch and poetry is also very satisfactorily found in Astrophil and Stella. Thus, shall we arrive at the conclusion that Astrophil is the typical, or rather, the archetypal Petrarchan lover? At first blush, it may seem so, but as one investigates further, it becomes problematic. First of all, there are scholars who believe that Petrarch's Laura was more a construct than a woman. It may be that Laura existed very much as a woman in flesh and blood, but she was more a construct than a woman. In fact, I remember seeing a paper by J.B. Trapp, if I'm not wrong, on Petrarch's Laura titled The Portraiture of an Imaginary Beloved. It is simply impossible to say this about Astrophil's Stella because Stella was no construct. She was a woman in flesh and blood. In fact, she was a distant relative. She was a cousin of Sir Philip Sidney because Stella has been, without any doubt, identified fully with Penelope Devereux. And Penelope Devereux was a cousin of Sir Philip Sidney. And they were childhood friends, in fact. They were engaged to be married. And there cannot be any contention claiming that Stella was no woman but a construct. It is true that, like Laura, Stella was also married to another man in the context of the sonnet sequence. She was married to Lordridge. But Petrarch did not get opportunities to interact with Laura. That is why we say that Laura is more a construct than a woman. And in contrast to that, it appears that Sir Philip Sidney got opportunities to interact with Penelope Devereux. Both were stars in the court of Queen Elizabeth. And as I said, they were even related to each other. Thus, while Petrarch saw Laura only once, Sir Philip Sidney saw Penelope Devereux innumerable times. Their paths must have crossed again and again and again, even when she was married to Lordridge. There is an important point I would like to make. Students of Sidney generally seem to have the impression that Stella was the paragon of chastity. And that was the reason why Stella always kept Astrophil at a distance. The reality was that Penelope Devereux was unhappily married to Lordridge and not exactly parsimonious in granting favors to her male admirers. In fact, while still married, she conducted a scandalous romance with Charles Blount, 8th Baron Mountjoy and 1st Earl of Devonshire, and even allowed him to father illegitimate children. So, I would postulate that the relationship between Astrophil and Stella was quite different from the relationship between Petrarch and Laura. Sidney and Penelope were cousins. They had at one point been engaged to each other. Both were stars of the same court. Their paths crossed often. They got numerous opportunities to interact with each other. Research is necessary to establish the exact nature of the relationship, all the dimensions of the relationship between Sidney and Penelope after Penelope married Lordridge. Attempts can be made to position the romance of Astrophil and Stella within the courtly love tradition of the Middle Ages. The courtly love tradition is a tradition of highly conventionalized love between a knight and a married noblewoman. It originated in southern France and then spread over much of Europe. The troubadours of southern France celebrated courtly love as an ennobling passion. The romance of Sir Philip Sidney and Penelope Devereux perfectly fits into the courtly love tradition. There is no doubt that Sir Philip Sidney is the ultimate knight, the perfect knight. He was handsome, he was a courtier, he was a diplomat, he was a warrior, he was a general, he was a poet, he was a scholar, he was a good conversationalist, he was graceful and polite in his behavior. I can go on and on. Thus we have the perfect knight Sir Philip Sidney offering his devotion to a married noblewoman, Penelope Devereux. But when you investigate further, you find that though ostensibly the story of Sir Philip Sidney and Penelope Devereux fits into the tradition of courtly love, there is more to it than mere courtly love. It was a very human relationship. It was a very natural relationship. Though in the poems matters may be presented in a conventionalized manner, actually the relationship between Sir Philip Sidney and Penelope Devereux was very natural and very human. Hence, it is not fair to see the relationship between Sidney and Penelope as merely a case of courtly love. Needless to say, Astrophil and Stella 31 is a very fine Petrarchan sonnet. A sonnet consists of 14 lines, as does Astrophil and Stella 31. The meter used is iambic pentameter. The rhyme scheme used is ABBA, ABBA, CD, CD, EE. The poem is organized in an octave and a sestet. The octave consists of 8 lines and the sestet consists of 6 lines. I have already said that the meter used is iambic pentameter. Iamb is a foot consisting of an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. Penta means 5. Pentameter means there are 5 feet in each line. Thus, every line of the poem contains 5 EMs, 5 feet, each foot consisting of a short syllable followed by a long syllable. Apostrophe is the figure of speech in which the speaker addresses somebody or something. Usually, the somebody or something is unable to respond to what he says. The somebody might be dead, the somebody might be absent, the something being inanimate is unable to respond. The present poem begins with a very fine apostrophe. With how sad steps, O moon, thou climb'st the skies. And a few lines down, then even a fellowship, O moon, tell me. Allusion means reference, especially indirect reference. Look at the third and the fourth lines of the present poem. What may it be that even in heavenly place, that busy archer his sharp arrows tries? This is a reference to Cupid, the Roman god of love. But Cupid is not mentioned by name. Cupid is not specifically referred to, but indirectly alluded to, because Cupid is armed with arrows, and the arrows are tipped in gold. Cupid is usually seen with bow and arrows. And when he sends a gold tipped arrow and the arrow attacks someone, that someone falls in love. So here is a beautiful classical allusion, beautiful allusion to Roman mythology. The speaker sees the moon, looks at the moon, addresses the moon, and starts talking to the moon as if the moon were a human being. This is a very powerful example of personification. The moon is personified. The moon is treated as a human being, and terms that are usually applied to human beings, such as sad, pale, having sad steps, are all used regarding the moon. This can also be seen as a case of pathetic fallacy, because the speaker is able to find that the moon has feelings, the moon has emotions, the moon is sorrowful, the moon is sad. So this is an excellent example of pathetic fallacy. The moon becomes a perfect symbol for the lover. The lover is rejected, the lover is dejected, the lover is sorrowful, the lover is sad, and the moon becomes a perfect symbol of the lover, because it appears that the moon experiences in the heavenly sphere all that the lover experiences in the earthly sphere. Alliteration is the repetition of the same consonantal sound or similar sounds in close succession. The poem begins, Astrophil and Stella 31 begins with a very fine example of alliteration. With how sad steps, O moon, thou climbst the skies. Look at the sound S, the letter S, which captures the sound S, is repeated over and over again in the line. Sad steps, thou climbst the skies. Assonance is the repetition of the same vowel sound or similar vowel sounds in close succession. Look at the case of assonance here. Sure, if that long with love acquainted eyes can judge of love, thou feelest a lover's case. Metaphor is the figure of speech in which an indirect comparison is set up. A metaphor is an implicit simile, just as a simile is an explicit metaphor. In the present case, we can say that there is a metaphorization process by establishing a comparison indirectly between the dejected flower and the moon. The comparison is not directly stated but subtly, indirectly established. Transferred epithet is the figure of speech in which the epithet or the adjective is attached deliberately to the noun it does not logically qualify. This is done in order to create a special effect. The present poem opens with a transferred epithet with how sad steps. The steps are not sad. The steps can never be sad. It is the moon which is sad. But a transferred epithet is deliberately used to create an impact, a special impact. I have been speaking for quite some time now, and I better wrap up this discussion. I would like to conclude by quoting a couple of lines from W.B. Yeats. You may be surprised that I should conclude a discussion of Astrophil and Stella 31 with a couple of lines from Yeats, a poet belonging to a different world, a different century, a different country, a different world. But when I recite the two lines, you will understand why I chose to quote W.B. Yeats. In the tower, W.B. Yeats asks, I quote, does the imagination dwell the most upon a woman won or woman lost? Unquote. I leave the answer to you.